So my talk today is going to be how Reaxys and partnered with ChemAxon, how we use ChemAxon's technology to build Reaxys and deliver, a lot of end users using Reaxys and delivering the relevant chemistry results to the end users. So thanks for giving me time to talk, and that introduction. We'll go ahead and start. So real quick, a little bit about myself. I've been with Elsevier for 20 years now. So, if you want to talk to me about the current news in what's going on with Elsevier, I think the big news is about the, sort of the UC negotiations. So talk with you about that. I started with Elsevier MDL, actually flipped that around 20 years ago, answering phone calls on ISIS-based, ISIS-host, ISIS-draw, transitioned to consulting, cheminformatics, the bioinformatics space as a consultant, deploying biological data registration systems all over North America, small biotechs, large pharma. Then about 10 years ago, Elsevier divested MDL, and they took from that 500 people at MDL, they took about 15 of us. I was one of the lucky people to go to Elsevier, and really there was about 4 of us that knew what was Reaxys before Crossfire Beilstein, and we were sort of in charge of, or our mandate was to train the Elsevier sales force to basically understand some of the life science products, right? So a lot of pre-sales, post-sales activities there. And in the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot of transition more into the sales group. And then back around 2009, when we were transitioning from Crossfire Beilstein, did work with the product team. The product manager, we started up in San Francisco with basically paper documents on what Reaxys would look like, traveled around to the companies, the universities, and basically we're prototyping Reaxys to what it is now, 10 years later. So a little bit about my role at Elsevier and sort of my experience with Reaxys. So today, like I said, we'll take a look at ChemAxon's technology in Reaxys, and how we use a lot of various ChemAxon tools to deliver the Reaxys product to the end user, and actually building the Reaxys database, right? We'll start with a brief introduction of Reaxys. We'll then go into the workflow of how we build the Reaxys database, go into a little bit detail about the manual excerption. We'll talk about the architecture of Reaxys, how we the back end, the front end, and then go into a little bit more in depth of structure queries, how the end users interact with the Reaxys database, primarily with the drawing tool in Marvin.js, and then some of the future projects that we've got going on that we're thinking about and doing for Reaxys. So, real quick, can you guys see that? Yeah. We're going to talk about Reaxys. So for Reaxys, a passion of Reaxys, the Reaxys product team is really helping users answer these 2 core questions across 3 segments. Reaxys primarily serves the pharma, chemicals, A&G segments. And really when somebody goes to Reaxys, they're looking at optimizing the properties of a compound, or they're looking to how to make a compound. Right, how to make a compound, or if it can be purchased. So those are the 2 core sort of use cases when somebody goes to Reaxys. So we have a long history in providing chemistry information and driving new developments. Back in 1800s, the first editions of Gemalan, Beilstein were released in 1989. Beilstein and Gemalan go live. In 1992, we launched Crossfire. And then in 2009, we took Crossfire to Reaxys. And then in about 2012, we added a lot of content to the Reaxys database. And at that point, we needed to change the interface. Reaxys was primarily known as a synthesis compound. We wanted to sort of expand into literature searching and exposing a little bit more of that content to the end user. How do we do that? So we relaunched Reaxys with a newer interface to hopefully expose sort of more of the Google type searching, exploring that the the additional documents that we loaded into Reaxys. So a bit about the core philosophy of Reaxys. Really, it's not when you do a search, let's give you a list of documents to look over, filter, right? What we want to be able to deliver are just the chemistry, the relevant chemistry information, right? How do you use that information as opposed to here's all the information, go look at it, read it. Some people still like doing that, but really we want to deliver the relevant answers to the chemist right on the spot, giving you a lot of tools to rank them, looking at the experimental details. Really, that's our core, right? Here's your detail, here's your information, go back to the lab and do your synthesis or make your decision. That's our core philosophy for the team. So back in 2013, we did clean up the interface. We did a lot of user testing, a lot of agile development methodologies to create this new user interface. Again, really to expose this type of Google-type searching where you can enter in a compound and then or natural language type terms like synthesis of a compound or properties, melting point, solubility of a compound, and hopefully deliver the right results to you. We also have the create structure, just putting that out there and making it really, again, simple. If you had seen it before, there were a lot of options, a lot of different buttons that you had to click. So trying to give the users the option to make it more easy and friendly to use. Also hiding the complexity, right? Alternatively, if somebody wanted to really be complex and do a search, we give the end user a way to design their own form with the query builder. You can design a querylet, drag them, combine them with operators, and then enter your search terms. The nice thing about this query builder, once a result is set, you can actually do edit in query builder. So once your search and your result is done, you can actually see how the query was built. So talking about education and academic, it's a great way to make transparent to the end user how that query was done, right? So there's a lot of things where if you typed in synthesis of a compound, one can then see how Reaxys drew the compound, how the search terms we used, so you can really teach your end users how the system works, so making it transparent how the searches were designed. Retrieving, again, relevant answers, anticipating needs. So when you do that search, the natural language, right, if you typed in a compound, omeprazole, aspirin, we'd present, hey, maybe you're looking for the structure, or are you looking for the reaction, or are you looking more for the documents around that search? So giving the user sort of options as to what the result set that they would be looking for. And things that they might not have considered. That we also have a Reaxys MedChem component, so maybe compounds or targets that your compound is hitting. Maybe that's what you're looking for, bioactivity data. Once you get to the result set, we present the compound with the nice filtering options, nice data, whether you're looking for physical data, patent data, spectral data, bioactivity. So these are experimental properties in the system, not necessarily calculated properties. Again, so our indexers are going into the articles, into the patents, and then pulling out the properties associated with those compounds, and then the experimental properties associated to that compound, and then tying it nicely, hyperlinked to the compound information that you would want to see. And then a nice graphical interface to compare different sort of filter or facets of information, right? So if you were to look at the index terms here, select that, you can see how the publication years line up. This is often used in the reaction piece, right? So if you, for example, selected yield, you can see the various reagents, solvents, catalysts that make up that hit set. So a lot of different ways to analyze your hit sets. Again, Reaxys, just to summarize what Reaxys is, over 100 million compounds, unique compounds. We have 55 million records, a large literature database. We've added 16,000, we're now at 16,000 journals that are in the database, quite large literature database. 45 million reactions in the system, what we're mainly known for. And then property data, 500, half a billion different experimental properties in Reaxys that users can better do their searching. Oftentimes, too, underused aspect is you can type in different parameters and property data and see which compounds fit in that sort of property data range. So a lot of uses for that for material science, things like that. We also have bioactivity and target data. So that, in a nutshell, is Reaxys. Now let's go into how the product team at Reaxys goes and uses ChemAxon tools in the workflow to build the database. Right, so we have our paper file here, just on the left-hand side. We do an automatic extraction of the data, run that through, get the abstract title, keywords, right, that comes in. And then we have indexers where we've embedded Marvin's sketch in this intuitive excerption interface, and they're drawing the compounds and they're pulling various data points, right, Marcouche, chemical names, and NMR through a controlled taxonomy so that we're then building this database. So we're using Marvin to draw the compounds in the system and then building the database there. Part of that workflow is a manual excerption using Marvin. We'll go into that in a bit more detail here, where, for example, again, on the left-hand side, this is that intuitive excerption interface. The left-hand side, we've got the journal article. We've got different sections in the journal article to hyperlink back, and then the compound is drawn, and we can add a little bit more of the different data points to that compound. And then you can see here, as we draw the compound, we can use the S groups, the data S groups, to add absolute, other different identifiers to that structure as we load it into the database. Another use of ChemAxon tools is to design the Marcouche tables. So when a user does a compound search, we have a nice display of different compounds in a patent and lining up this Marcouche table. So we're using ChemAxon's tool to design this table, and you can see that in Reaxys. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we're using those tools, right? So Marvin Sketch, we're drawing the predefined R groups, and then we're also using different aliases to signify on the compound on that Marcouche structure. And then going into the manual excerption, really, how do we come up with that table? How do we make sort of that work-intensive process a little bit more manageable? We're using the enumeration tool in ChemAxon. So oftentimes, right, in a patent, you're going to see a lot of these sort of compounds, right, prophetic compounds. It would be time-intensive for an indexer to actually, one of our folks, to draw the compounds, right? So we end up drawing the scaffold and then having the different substituents that are available to that would be in that sort of drawing. Then we actually run the enumeration tool to draw the compounds, and then the indexer can then just say, this is what was in the patent, so we can actually have all the compounds in there instead of having to draw all the compounds and really tying that back into the database. So we're using that enumeration tool to create all the compounds and then make the actual table in the system that I showed in the slide before. So again, using some of that information to create the database. Now we'll go into the architecture, using some of these from the Marvin.js from the end user standpoint to draw the structure, then using JChem Web Services, Mole Printer on the back end to get the result, deliver it back to the user. The whole architecture is embedded in AWS, right? So let's get in here. Amazon Web Services. The user will start with ChemAxon Marvin.js, draw a query, it goes into AWS, the Reaxys Business Intelligence Engine translates that query, right? And this is where we then use Marvin ChemAxon tools to deliver quickly to the end user the end result, right? So I don't know, back in 2009, I remember when we were first doing the testing, it would take like a minute. You'd click on a structure, you'd click on it, it'd take a minute to get the the result back, and it was never gonna. We were never gonna transfer this big end user base of Crossfire Beilstein users to Reaxys, right? So did have to improve it, and it's actually quite fast now using again these different Marvin beans, these JChem web services. We're enhancing the performance of these actions. It'd be too slow. The 2D, 3D rendering of molecules are sped up using the JChem web services. The Reaxys front end, again, we're using the JChem web services to send the search request back. And then once the search request is sent back to the user, we're using the ChemAxon mole printer to display the result set. So again, a brief look at the architecture of how we use ChemAxon tools in Reaxys. And if you wanted to know more, definitely contact me. I can set you up with connect you with the product team. They'll be at ACS in a couple weeks, and definitely talk to them about how this architecture is lined up. And you've got the ChemAxon team to talk about how these different ChemAxon tools are used in Reaxys more in depth. So part of my talk too was Marvin.js. So a lot of my time was spent more on the end user side. So probably between 2009 to when I was doing a lot of training to 2017, I probably did more Marvin.js trainings than anybody, because most of my time when I did a Reaxys training, 20 minutes of it was spent showing how Marvin.js worked. So that was the first thing, that was the entry point to Reaxys, and part of my job was to get them comfortable with drawing, right? So that was the biggest thing if somebody was going to learn how to use Reaxys, was to use the drawing tools. So Marvin.js can often be done to draw these complex reaction queries. I often took a step back and tried to simplify them, right? We couldn't teach R groups in the first training. But you can see there, we can include R groups, so these sophisticated drawing tools, R groups, reaction center, maker, break a bond, atom lists, different position variation bonds. So very complex tool, great, easy way to explore the database. So Reaxys does have a lot of different drawing tools available. From 2008 to 2000, I think most folks are using Marvin Sketch. Even a lot of the internal folks are using Marvin Sketch, as opposed to, we've always had ChemDraw support in there, Dotmatics Elemental. I think we all just fall back to Marvin Sketch just because it's the easiest. So from my sort of the three things that when I do a training, I always just point the three things that I think users appreciate the most, really, instead of all these things, is when they draw a structure, right? I always want to show them that draw explicit hydrogens, right? So if they were to do a substructure search, they draw the compound, just draw that explicit hydrogens. It would draw all the hydrogens on the compound, and then they can use the eraser, erase a part where they wanted substitution to occur, right? So that was one of the first things I wanted to show them, right? Because most times chemists weren't actually as sophisticated as they thought they could be with drawing, right? They would just put in the CAS number, send it off, and then, I got a reaction, I got a result set. But I always wanted to show them, hey, you could do a substructure search, and instead of going into the complicated parts, I'd show them add explicit hydrogens and then use the eraser tool. The other thing that they did like was the atom list. That's the second one, and then tied for third definitely is atom mapping position variation bond as tools in the chemist's belt to advance sort of what they're looking at. And then using mole printer, once the search is sent back, we have this nice display using the mole printer, so the optimized results. Really great way to display the result set in Reaxys. Another thing I want to talk about is the work we did with the ChemAxon FE's group, actually, when we first deployed. When we looked at the number of questions that we would get on Reaxys, it was always around drawing, right? So again, I trained on Marvin Sketch, and a lot of our questions were on drawing. We worked with the team, right? A lot of the things were in the older version that we deployed in Reaxys, the user feedback. We needed to create an improvement plan. We worked with ChemAxon. Really, let's expose max substitution count lock atoms. So in this old version, you used to have to right-click the atom, or you did some keyboard command .s+ to do substitution count. We made it more readily available so we could easily train on that. Atom mapping was, again, hidden there. And we moved some of the abbreviated groups accessible to the right-hand side, the Reaxys generic groups, and then the updated template. So again, a collaboration with ChemAxon to improve the drawing tool that's native to, that's the default drawing tool in Reaxys. So future projects of using ChemAxon's technology in Reaxys and really some things that we're looking at. Right, so in Reaxys, we're really looking at the predictive tools using the Reaxys medicinal chemistry bioactivity data. What should we make next, right? Once we get in here, what kind of replacements would enhance affinity, correct an ADME problem, overcoming an IP issue. So looking at predictive, right? We have a nice paper with Professor Waller on using AI and machine learning to do predictive retrosynthesis on reactions, right? Looking at the big 45 million reaction hit space and then really predicting the best reactions to go forward with. That's something we're also looking at. Target prediction is another one that is also in Reaxys, that definitely looking at using ChemAxon tools, some of the modules that we're looking at. Pictures creation, 2D to 3D, standardizer. Again, these are ChemAxon tools, structure checker, Marvin space, stereoisomers creation, calculation plugin, mole converter to help with some of these future functionality that we hope to incorporate into Reaxys. So with that, I thank you for your attention on how we're using ChemAxon tools in Reaxys and taking a bit of your time to hear how we use, I use Marvin Sketch to teach end users to use Reaxys.
Did I understand that you completely enumerate out the marcouches? Do you completely enumerate it?
I'll have to check on that, but I think they sort of pick a subset of substituents. Yeah, they sort of understand. They took a real quick look at what substituents would be there, then enumerate those, right? To that.
So have you tried to use the marcouche searching stuff from ChemAxon?
We'll have to talk to the product. Maybe we'll ask them how to do it. Why we don't use that to do it already in the past? That'd be a good question for our product team. There are a lot of things. I saw all these things that you guys are talking about, like, why don't we use compliance checker, right? One of the big things in Reaxys is, hey, is that product compliant, right? Can we ship it? Can we do, like, oh, well, hey, you know what? We don't have that information. So I'll have to get back to our team and say, why aren't we looking at compliance checker in Reaxys?